Alright, so I want to do a little video on, this is the new engine for the white truck up the hill there, the whatever OBS, I don't know what they are, whatever year it is. But, so this is basically the same thing that came out, except all the pistons are still together and the cylinders aren't scored, and it doesn't have blown head gasket. So, about to put this on the stand and take everything. I've already taken everything off. The other engine, the oil pan, flex plate, all that stuff. So this is the one that destroyed that cylinder, and so it's pretty much junk. It's a Gen 3 5.3 and not worth nothing to nobody, so to the scrap pile it goes. And then the heads are already in the pile, and I've got these heads there that came off of this engine. I gotta swap the valve springs and swap the seals. I got some new valve stem seals for it, so I'll get that and get this thing back together, and hopefully get the truck down here in a little while and try to stab it back in the truck. But I want to talk about one of the main things I get asked all the time is, how much does this stuff cost, and will I do it for you and whatever. And I'm not a shop that's open to the public. I do not work for just anybody. If you know me, we'll work something out. I'll work on it, but I don't work on just anybody's stuff. That's kind of how that is. I'm not a shop that's open to the public. I only work on what I want to work on, and that's kind of how it is. So, the forced induction stuff, I think I've posted one video. It was like, can you turbo your LS for $1,000? And quickly we learned that no, you can't. And people don't understand what this stuff costs, the time and effort that's involved, and everything that's involved with doing a boosted LS. And because of the internet, because of Facebook and YouTube and all the forums and internet talk and people, everybody wants to act like this stuff is just so cheap, but it's really not. I mean, it takes a lot of time to do this stuff. It takes a lot of money and a lot of patience to do it. And you really have to have somebody that knows what they're doing to do this stuff, because it's critical to getting it set up right, getting the right injectors, getting the right camshaft, getting the right turbo, converter, transmission, gear ratio, fuel system, all that stuff. So I had a guy that got one of my truck that I had done for somebody, that white truck I have on the channel a while back, which I know it's hard to keep up, but it was a white, like 99 to 02 truck, and it came to me as a roller because the gentleman had gotten screwed by 2 other shops. And then I ended up basically just putting a Gen 3 5.3 in and a 4L60, got it all together for him. We did end up doing a camshaft in it, set of headers, and a stall converter and all that stuff. And so now the truck's changed hands, so everybody wants to come back to me, and they're like asking me a million questions about it and wanting to know what it's going to cost to go turbo on it, and parts and labor and everything, and of course, how much horsepower is it going to make, and on and on and on. Well, first off, it's a Gen 3 5.3. These engines don't have the best rods. They're not a very strong rod. Not this one, but that motor made 683, and I don't really know what happened as to why it went out, but it did. So it blew both head gaskets on both sides, one in 2 places and one in one. So they'll handle some power, for a street pump gas thing. I always try to do Gen 4, but as far as holding power, Gen 4 stuff is the way to go. 4L60 is definitely not the way to go. It will not last. I have tried it, and somebody will say, "Oh, you didn't spend enough money on it." Well, when I can get a 4L80 for a couple $100, well, you used to be able to get them fairly inexpensive, but now they're harder to find and they cost a lot more. So, that one, Doug built that one, so I'm really excited to see how that one does. It's going in here, but it's a nice piece. Doug really knows what he's doing. I think the 4L80E guy or something like that. We've talked before. He's very knowledgeable on the 80s and does a good job, but that's something like you're going to have behind this thing to handle the power and everything. So, and I think I don't even want to say a number because I don't remember how much it was, but he shipped it to us. We didn't have a core. We didn't have a LS80 core to ship back to him, so we had to eat that. But the other side of that too is if we did have a core, it was going to cost us $200 to ship it back to him. So it's really kind of not worth it to ship, because with the LS core, I think he gives you like $600 credit. So I mean, you get $400 back, I guess. But we just didn't have a LS80 core at the time. So, but as far as this goes, what you need to do the turbo setup, I mean, I've proven that you can run the stock camshaft and in these and do boost. The Quadra is a good example. That truck really worked really well for its application with the stock camshaft, and it just had LS6 valve springs, and everything else on the engine was completely untouched. All I did was add an Amazon T4 log, which is about $200, 7875 cast wheel turbo, and I think those are $400 or something. I built my own crossover wastegate. They used to be about $100. I think they've gone up because VS changed it to the piston style or something. But anyway, the wastegates are 150 probably. I would budget, and then the blow-off valve. Somebody asked about that. Historically, I don't run a blow-off valve. I just haven't run one. I don't run them. If I have one, if I get a kit that comes with one or whatever, then yeah, I'll cut the pipe and weld it in and run it. But it's, I've never had an issue with it, so I don't run one. Unless I have one laying around and whatever, I'll stick one on there. If it's for a customer, they like the whoosh noise when they let off, so I'll stick one on there for them. But then you're gonna need an oil feed. You're gonna need an oil drain, and off of here is where I always get my oil feed. You just drill that out, and it's already the right size. So you just drill through there, and then, this one's pretty filthy, but you just drill it out, tap it 1/8" pipe, and then put your dash 4, 1/8" pipe to dash 4, and come over, feed your turbo, and then I usually drain it back into the front of the pan right here, and I try to get it as high as I can. Usually what I'll do is I'll drill and tap it. It's the best way, because then you can remove the fitting and put the bolt in, and then screw the fitting in, and you're good to go. It's out of the way. It comes down and curves around the balancer, and it allows you to keep the AC and everything. This engine, the front cover, he put it on the front cover right here. That's where he drained back on that one. But injectors, you're gonna need at least 80-pound injectors, and I've learned that it's really a good idea to buy some good injectors, especially you want one that has good injector data. And a lot of the cheaper injectors just don't have any data anywhere, and unless you scour the internet for hours and find somebody on the HP Tuners forum that posts a tune file or something that, you know, has that same injector and they're trying to get it to run right and all, then it's difficult to get them to run right without good injector data. Then you're going to need a good fuel system. You're going to need at least a 450 pump. You know, those are $150 for that. I like to run the Hydromat. The Hydromat's about $200. And the stock fuel lines are about 3/8. They'll typically be okay, but honestly, you really need to go bigger. The PQI regulators, usually what I run, they're $30 or $40 off Amazon. And then, you know, you're going to need some fittings and hoses, fuel line and everything to get that connected in and onto the rails. Somebody asked about the rails. The early style intakes have the regulator on the rails right here, and they have two, the supply and the return, and it has a little regulator that is actually vacuum referenced. But if you go to, I believe it's 04 and newers or turnless, and you know, you can use that. From the best way to do it would be to buy a set of rails and to feed it at the back of this side, come up through these injectors, have the crossover on the front, come down this injector, and then come up from the back of the rail over to your regulator, let that regulate the pressure, and then return it back to the tank. That's really the best way to do it. The stock rails, I don't feel that they give good distribution to the fuel, because if you're feeding it in here and then it has to pressurize it and all that, and the other thing is the regulator is before the rail, so your pressure at the rail and the rail might be different. So I've done it that way a lot on stock rails, but from what I've learned recently, I don't think that's the way to do it. And the correct way to do it is to feed it from the back, cross over to the front, come back out, hit the regulator, and then return it back to the tank. So, but an intercooler, I don't know what they are anymore. Probably $200 or something for a good intercooler. Again, VS Racing has a, you know, they call it the Denma package, and you can change or upgrade whatever you want in there. But talking to Varen, it's kind of, I guess, I know he's got a lot of people talking and asking him a lot of questions, I'm sure, but usually when I ask him questions, I don't get any kind of response out of him, so I don't even bother. But maybe when you order the kit, just, I don't know, call him or maybe put in the notes or something. But then the intercooler piping and all that stuff. So if you piece it all together, you know, it's probably going to be about the same or more, but I like some pieces different than other pieces. The Denma package is about $1,000, and that's going to get you the turbo, the intercooler piping, the intercooler, wastegate, blow-off valve, and I think that's pretty much it. You know, like I say, and then you got to have injectors, fuel system, the exhaust. Again, I like to buy 4-inch Mandelbrot exhaust pipes for a diesel, put them on there, cut them up, and make my downpipe if I'm doing a truck, and get it under the car and get some straight run. That works really well. And this one he had a high ram on the white truck here, but I mean, obviously we're going back with that because the piping and everything set up for it. But the stock truck intake does fine, the TBSS does fine, the regular 3-bolt one does fine. They all seem to do well in boost. But on these things, pump gas, the limitations we seem to see is about 700 wheel horsepower, close to 700 wheel horsepower on pump 93. In my opinion, I think that 15 pounds on them on pump gas is a little bit much. Again, based on what I've seen in my experience. So from now on, I'm going to probably run 12, 13 pounds of boost on them, and, keep the timing very conservative. And I'll be doing my fuel system that way as well. So don't look at the cam bearings on this thing. They're fine. One of the lifters was actually failed on this thing, and I don't know how it didn't drop the needle bearings in it, but it kicked the wheel off and broke it, and tore the cam up pretty good, which sucked for me because I wanted the cam out of here to keep on hand to do DOD deletes with people that don't care about camshafts, and somehow I'm out of stock camshafts, so it was a bummer that this one was screwed up. So I've got a 4.8 over there that I'm going to, hopefully the cam's good in that, because I got a guy and then do a DOD delete on for him. But yeah, swapping these in the cars that didn't come in, I talked on another video about it. It's not an inexpensive thing. I've been doing this a long time, so when something comes up and I gotta buy a $2,000 torque converter, that doesn't really faze me or bother me because I'm used to it. I know that this stuff costs money and everything, but like the one guy that was wanting to do an LS swap in his C10, was shocked that it was going to be more than $5,000, and that wasn't even including the engine. He got that engine over there for $400, and everything that you need to go up the parts and the labor and everything. I mean, you can't do this stuff for $5,000. $5,000 is nothing. And I had another guy come to me. He had a nitrous combo and was wanting to go turbo. He wanted 1,000 wheel horsepower turbo setup, and I threw him some rough numbers together. Just the parts were about $7,000, and he told me, he's like, man, I just don't have that kind of money. That's just, people were telling me that it was cheap. And I'm like, well, you're talking to the wrong people, man, because this stuff is not cheap. So at the end of the day, he didn't end up bringing it to me, and I'm kind of glad he didn't. He ended up doing it himself. Last I heard, he had over $10,000 in parts in it and still didn't have it, wasn't finished, and was saying that, man, I wished I'd have taken it to Michael. So he, and just let him build it and done everything. And he would have got a better result, because again, I know what it takes to get there and I know how to do it. So that's how it is. I mean, you learn stuff doing this, and when you've done it a long time, you know what works and what doesn't. And I will also say that just because you've been doing something a long time doesn't mean you know what you're doing either. I've seen that too. And I'm not saying that I know everything, because I don't. I know what I know, and what I know is from experience and trying stuff. Back in the day before the internet, you couldn't go on there and ask what cam should I run in my LS. Of course, there wasn't really, the LS wasn't that big. It wasn't big then. You had what cam should I run in my small block Chevrolet or small block Ford, and of course the answer was 3/4 race. That's what you had to run in them back then. But anyway, I don't know, I'm probably rambling on, but just want people to understand that there's nothing about this is cheap. Yeah, you might be able to get the engine for cheap, but the engine is just a small portion of the build, really, in the grand scheme of things. Especially if you're doing any kind of grudge car or race car or something like that, you're gonna have money in all kind of money in suspension, electronics, transmission, rear end, and all that stuff. I had a nitrous Zephyr probably 12 or 13 years ago. It made 800 at the tires on a single plate kit, and I probably had over $20,000 in that car. And you certainly couldn't tell it by looking at it, but that car, it was fast. It was a light car, and I put the money where it needed to be, and the car was fast. So, that's $20,000 in the car. Like I say, you looked at it and you wouldn't think there was $500 in the whole car, but you know, it takes a lot of money. So that's the point I want to convey, is just, you know, this stuff ain't cheap and it costs money.